everyone. We have Jen already on. Thank you for joining us today, Jen. And Pinny, is that a picture of you, Pinny?
Wow.
I love the black and whites, and I know it's not you. Um, we have Penny. Thank you very much for being our guest today. Congressman Greg Stanton will be joining us at 12:20. So all three of our speakers we're really looking forward to. And I am going to begin. See if I can start this. There we are. So welcome to the Blue Tuesday Forum. Please make sure that you are muted so we can all hear our wonderful speakers today. We respectfully acknowledge that statewide we are on the ancestral homelands of the indigenous nations that have inhabited these lands since time immemorial, including the Akshan, Akamela Odom, Apache, Colorado River, Fort Mojave, Gila River, Havasupai, Hopi, Wallapai, Navajo, Paiute, Pima, Pipash, Wachan, Yaqui, and Yavapai peoples. Their traditional care and honoring of these lands allow us to be here today. And I apologize for my cold. Today we have Congressman Greg Stanton from the CD4, Pinny Sheoran, who's going to talk to us about the League of Women Voters, and Jen Marson, who's the Executive Director of the Arizona Association of Counties. Excuse me. I want to remind you that in September, we have Mary Beth O'Connor, the author of a book called Junkie to Judge. She was a meth junkie, cleaned herself up, and is now a judge. And C.J. Pasco, also an author of Nice is Not Enough, a very profound book about bullying. In October, we have Chris Mays, our Arizona State Attorney General, and Francesca Piccioli Martin. She's a young woman who is executive director and founder of Keep Arizona Blue Student Coalition. And in November, after the election, we'll have okay, now what? Adrian Fontes, our Arizona Secretary of State, Patty O'Neill, who is the chair of the largest county after Los Angeles, Maricopa County Democrats, and Melissa Galarza, who is chair of the largest LD in Arizona, LD 12. So we want you to join us then. In our armchair activism, I have some really good information for you. There are going to be 13 measures on this ballot. It'll be a 3-page ballot. And already people are in a high level of anxiety thinking, okay, 13 measures. How do I know that I'm going to be voting the correct way with 13 measures? Well, we have a really easy guide for you. Proposition 139 is the Arizona Abortion Access Act, which provides women with reproductive freedom. Vote yes on that. All of the others, the dirty dozen, they call them, were ballot measures that were put on by the state legislature. Proposition 139 did have public signatures on it. So you can vote 1, yes, 139, and all the others, you can simply vote no. If you do want, and I would encourage you, please, to find out about all of these ballot measures, you can go to cebv.us. That is Civic Engagement Beyond Voting, and find out what each one of these ballots means, the impact for you and our state. So be informed. On the subject of school boards, there are many school board candidates. The Save Our Schools organization, if you go to sosarizona.org, and if you want a quick way to get to it, just do sosarizona.org/vote for public ed/school board/. I'll put that up at the end of the program today, and you will find for each school district in Arizona, it will give the names of the endorsed candidates for the school board. Each one of those candidates has pledged to acknowledge their role as an advocate for public education, an advocate for the Arizona legislature to increase permanent, dedicated funds for K-12 schools, oppose the diversion, oops, sorry to do that to you, of any portion of their district's funding to for-profit models, and advocate for diversity and inclusivity in district policies. These are the candidates that will bring public education to the level that we agree. For example, if you click on Scottsdale Unified School District, you will find the 3 endorsed candidates by Save Our Schools Arizona for the Scottsdale Unified District. Doesn't matter what district you live in, Yuma, Higley, it's all there at saveourschools.com. Okay. And this is a good time because we only have almost 80 days until Election Day to become active in your local LD, your congressional district, Maricopa County, and Arizona Democratic Party. And they're easy to Google. You don't have to memorize the names. You just Google them. And we have some delightful remarks, profound remarks from our chair, Linda Ambrose. Linda.
Thank you, Janie. I'm afraid I have a black screen today. I got dressed up and everything, but we don't have a camera here. Flagstaff has changed our lives in so many ways. So I'm going to just talk. Can you hear me?
Yes, and Linda, what I'm going to do, because I've had several requests for the past website on so what I'm going to do is put that up while you are speaking, if it's all right with you.
Oh, okay. So tell me when you want me to begin.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I wish you could see me, but I get to see you. And so it's nice to see familiar, loving, smiling faces. So I again welcome you. Janie already has, but welcome you to our Blue Tuesday Forum for August. And I seem to say this every month, but what a month we've had this month in August, ending with the incredible Democratic Convention last Thursday. My sharing today is going to be less of my words and more of the highlighted words from so many wiser speakers in the 4-day marathon Democratic 2024 convention. There were so many fascinating speakers from all walks of life, yet each of us probably came away from those positively exhilarating 4 days remembering different points and highlights. I hope to capsulize and briefly share what were for me the most meaningful thoughts from some of those speakers so that we can retain and hold on to these highlights while sharing to as many inside and outside our circle as possible in these next 2.5 months before 2024's election. It seems the perfect place to begin would be by citing our country's great young poetess, Amanda Gorman, as she read her dazzling inspiration for what lies ahead. Her whole poem was so breathtaking. but I was only able to write 2 highlights because I was so engrossed in her beautiful poem. But I kept those in my heart, and I want to quote, "We are one family with love for one another." And the other quote, "The American dream is a dare to dream together. Let us be worthy of it." End quote. So back to the first day with President Joe Biden. It was a great beginning and an ending of sorts for what I believe history will show to be one of our greatest presidents in this century. He declared his continuing fight for democracy for 2024's election and beyond, and knows his foresight in choosing Kamala Harris to be his vice president, being his greatest contribution towards saving democracy. Then came Hillary Clinton, who reminded all women to rise up and stand up, not for just women's rights, but for all people's rights. In her run for President of the United States in 2016 against Trump, she was the first woman to run for the highest office in the land. And in doing so, she endured many sexist and gender absurdities, such as degrading judgments about her hairstyles or her wearing apparel, but never about her substance and her mind. Even as she won the popular vote, yet not the electoral count, I believe she paved the way for the 2024 election to bring to our country the first woman president in U.S. history, Kamala Harris. Hillary concluded stating, quote, "Women's time is now." Former Speaker of the House and still Congressman Nancy Pelosi powerfully reminded us that January 6, 2021's insurrection attempt gave us grave pause, and yet, quote, "We gave proof that our flag was still there," end quote. Furthering her point that even more so, we now must protect our rights and defend our very fragile democracy. Nancy gave quick examples that our Democratic nominations for president and vice president are already working to restore our rights. Kamala for women's rights and so many more rights, and Tim for veterans' rights and banning assault weapons so that children are not gunned down at their schools. Then there followed the electric Oprah Winfrey, with conviction and wide open arms, enthusiastically stating, quote, "What matters most is freedom, wherein joy is certain to follow." She pointed at the example of the Trump's party assaults on our choices, where books are dangerous, but assault weapons are okay. And though they try to divide us, quote, she says, "When we stand together, it is impossible to divide us." Continuing to quote her poignant statements, "Freedom is not free. No, hard work and heart work for democracy is required." End quote. And another one, "These are complicated times requiring adult conversations." She meaningfully continued, quote, "Of Jamaican and Indian immigrant parents, it is time that such a daughter as Kamala should be our next 47th President of the United States. But even more so, because she has values and character, along with decency, respect, and plain common sense, qualities that belong on the ballot for 2024's president of this great country." And I end her quotes. Moving on, what a forthright, honest, and direct Vice President, Democratic nominee we have in Tim Walz. With just a few examples of his quotes, we have a commitment to the common good, where neighbors are helping neighbors, no matter their politics, respecting each other, end quote. And who couldn't love this next quote? "Mind your own damn business." Then specifically explaining how he and his wife had fertility problems, but with IVF's help, and they had a daughter, finally, who they named Hope. And she was quite precious, giving her daddy the heart sign. Furthermore, Tim extrapolated that government needs to get out of the bedroom and out of people's love choices. Another of his indelible statements, we're not going back, alluding to the Republicans' Project 2025, which, as he says, serves nobody but the rich and those who want power, and is the opposite of democratic values. Concluding with another of Tim's memorable statements, quote, let's face it, the other party is just weird. That demonstrates that Tim Walz is one of a kind, a down-home and genuine article for a vice president, which is just what Kamala needs as she fulfills her presidential duties. And by the way, his beautiful son, who has a nonverbal learning disability, couldn't have demonstrated more who Tim Walz is as a person and a father. As his son effervescently cried, stood up and repeated, that's my dad, that's my dad, that's my dad. Wow, that joy just tugged at my heartstrings. Before I have to leave the convention at day 3 with my takeaways, I really feel it is necessary to shout out a couple of Michelle Obama's relevant words for this month and next, because she was spot on when she forewarned all of us to not fall into the Goldilocks syndrome, as she called it, which means if this happily ever after energy that we were just feeling might subside a bit, and we begin to feel depressed or lose our enthusiasm because we could hear disappointing poll numbers, or the lies and the conspiracy theories keep assaulting us and may get us down. If and when that happens, her words, go out and do something. In her other words, to move America forward, she suggests we meet negativity with action. We marry hope with action. I leave you with the above-mentioned words of special wisdom from great American leaders attending our Democratic Convention from day 1, 2, 3. I will conclude with the rest of day 3 and 4 in my next month's chair comments, because so many of these speakers left us with such great reminders and wisdom to share with any and all that we communicate with in these few short months ahead. I can't imagine that there wasn't one soul who witnessed any or all of the Democratic Convention who didn't come away with more energy, more enthusiasm, or even more fire in our bellies to elect Kamala Harris as our next President of the United States, with Tim Walz as our next Vice President of these United States. Always and to be continued. I thank you for listening, and I thank you for caring. All right, and so we move on to our fantastic Arizona Congressman Greg Stanton and other great speakers. Thanks, Janie.
Absolutely. Yes. As I told Cameron before, I have a 3-hour introduction for Congressman Stanton. Just just the tip of the iceberg of things that he's done for us in Arizona. But I'll cut it back. We are truly honored to have Representative Greg Stanton from Arizona's 4th Congressional District address us today. When Congressman Stanton says he will support an issue or work to solve a problem, he means it. Every day he is in Congress, he works hard to make our lives better. He serves on the Foreign Affairs Committee and on Transportation and Infrastructure Committees that make a difference in our lives every day. Water is life, and the way we manage water will shape the future of our communities. Greg Stanton considers sustainability, current government issues, and the critical need for bold leadership to ensure that our communities are resilient and sustainable. Last month, Congressman Stanton was presented with the Hero Award from the American Alliance of Retired Americans, in particular for these issues for which he has been a staunch champion. Capping the price of insulin and lowering the cost of many prescription drugs, protecting and expanding Social Security and Medicare, and bringing Americans the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, that benefits each one of us to fight against climate change, tax inequity, and extreme healthcare costs. Thanks to the IRA and Congressman Stanton, this retired public school teacher has saved thousands of dollars so far with the Inflation Reduction Act. And you should too. Look it up. As an early co-sponsor of the Equality Act, Stanton has made it his mission to ensure the full equality is the law of the land. And before he even started in Congress, Stanton signed on to a sweeping campaign finance and electoral reform bill, which will finally bring greater transparency and accountability to Congress. He's developed a reputation in Congress for working across the aisle and being a tireless advocate for Arizona, who knows the issues of his state and his district inside and out. Congressman Stanton has never been focused on scoring political points or giving a nice speech. His singular focus in Congress is on making your life better, and the results speak for themselves. Greg knows how to get things done and has worked tirelessly to improve the lives of his constituents. He flies home every weekend to work in his district and to spend time with his family. It is our honor to present to you Congressman Greg Stanton.
All right, Janie, thank you for that kind introduction. Linda and the team from Blue Tuesday. It's great to be back. I don't know how often I've appeared before Blue Tuesday, but every time it is fun, energetic. I know it's the most passionate people who care about the future of Arizona and the future of our country. So I love coming back as often as I can. And Janie, your personal friendship has meant the world to me. Yes, I mean, look, on a personal note, I am an old-fashioned public servant. I love to serve the community. That's what I have done with my life and career, and what I hope to do again if the voters of Arizona District 4 are kind enough to me to have me be reelected in this critically important election year. This has been, it's been a year, hasn't it? Well, for all of us, and certainly in the political realm. As you know, I'm a local kid from Arizona. I grew up in West Phoenix. My family lived at 39th Avenue and Dunlap from 1973. And my dad owned that house until he passed away in January of this year. So over 50 years in West Phoenix, right by Metro Center. The reason I got the public service bug is growing up in the Stanton household. My family was all about service. My parents, through our church, St. Jerome's Catholic Church, ran a wonderful organization called Christian Needs Network. And the whole philosophy behind it was, if there's a need in the community, fill it. If someone needs help, go help them. You show your faith by your actions, by helping others. And that's what they did. People every day would deliver to my household food, clothing, shoes, diapers, and we would work through our wonderful group of church volunteers. We would deliver those items to mostly migrant workers who were working in the agricultural fields in the far west part of the city. Many of them were seasonal workers from Mexico. Many of the people that we demonize in our body politic, they're working so hard to put food on our table. The least we could do is to serve them, to help fulfill their needs. Many ended up sleeping in the fields because they were just here temporarily. And so people would bring those items to our house every single day. Our living room became a storage area. I did not realize that doing that probably violated city rules and regulations, zoning rules, until I was on city council myself. But what the heck, it was there to serve the people. We became an illegal warehouse in the West Valley. But I just saw them work for 35 years in this organization, helping the community. Love God, help your neighbor. And that's what it's all about. That's the household that I grew up in. I bring it up because, why do I love serving so much? My parents did it without anybody giving them an award or throwing them a dinner. This was their service to community. So I was so lucky. After graduating high school, Cortez High School in West Phoenix, I went on to college out of state in Wisconsin, and then I went to law school at the University of Michigan. I came back home and got super active in the community, volunteering, working on campaigns of people that I believed in. I got active in the old LD25s in Central Phoenix. For those of us who've been involved in Democratic politics a long time, if you can remember, it's the old Chris Comiskey and Chuck Blanchard district in Central Phoenix. So I cut my teeth as a legislative district leader before I was lucky enough to get a seat on city council for the city of Phoenix. So I've been in service for a long period of time, and I can tell you, based upon that experience, man, what an incredibly critical election this year is. I know we say it's the most important election. I'm not even going to say that because that's such a cliche, but it is the most dangerous election of our lifetime. If we are not successful, if Donald Trump gets back into that White House and we don't have a Democratic Senate or a Democratic House, you know exactly what's going to happen. We're going to move into authoritarian direction. No exaggeration. Project 2025 lays out their plan in excruciating and painful detail what another Trump administration would do. And someone that was involved in Democratic politics before it was a cool thing to do. And yes, you're all cool because you're doing the cool thing right now with your leadership and activism. We used to have great candidates. We worked our tails off, and unfortunately, we lost most of those elections back in the day. Now we win. When we work, we win. You heard that over and over and over again at the convention. I love the convention report that I heard earlier. I was not at the convention only because, man, I love winning. I love serving. I didn't want to take 4 days off the campaign trail, so I stayed in town and worked hard on my own reelection. I figured that was the best way I could serve Vice President Harris is by winning my very competitive election this year. In my district, AZ04 is actually a district that has more Republicans than Democrats in it. It has a partisan lean of only Democratic +1. It's Chandler, it's Mesa, it's Tempe, and Ahwatukee Foothills. That's the only portion of Phoenix that I still have in the district. Obviously, I was, I know we're talking about all of the convention, but that first night to see President Biden talk about one of the most selfless things that I've ever seen, whether in politics or anything else, for someone to willingly give up the opportunity to serve in the most powerful position on planet Earth for the greater good, because he ultimately came to the conclusion that most of us did, and that our values had a better chance of winning with the vice president rather than President Biden. What an incredibly selfless act. I hope and pray if I'm ever put in that position, I don't want to be put in that position, but if I ever am, that I would have the courage and strength to do what Joe Biden did, is to step aside and let someone that had a better chance of winning play that. And what an incredible job the vice president has done so far in consolidating Democrats behind her and pushing forward with our agenda. That's not an easy thing to do, by the way. We are an unruly and sometimes dysfunctional bunch of folks here on the Democratic side. You can't corral us easily. And to see us come together in unity, best displayed at that convention, for me, someone who's been involved in Democratic politics for a long time, really, really an amazing thing to do. But here's my point, and then I'm going to open up to any questions, and that is this. We're going to work our tails off to make sure that Vice President Harris is successful in Arizona, the most important battleground state in the United States of America. As Arizona goes, that is how the presidential race is going to go. So we're the most important battleground state. We need to win. We have no choice, no substitute but victory. But we want to make sure that the vice president has the support in Congress that she needs. So I'm going to make a case that winning the House of Representatives and holding on to the Senate is right there. I mean, if winning the presidency is one, winning the House and Senate is 1A, so that we can support her agenda through the majority, having the majority in the House of Representatives. And you know, we are only down 4 seats around the entire United States. Out of 435 seats, Democrats only have a deficit in the House of 4 seats. And guess what? We have 3 hyper-competitive seats here in Arizona. The seat that I'm lucky enough to represent, which has more Republicans than Democrats, fortunately, I'm lucky enough to serve in that position now. I don't take that for granted. I'm going to work as hard as I can to hold on to this seat. And obviously, the 2 seats that are on the red to blue list, the most likely to flip, AZ01, which is the seat in kind of North Phoenix, Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, Cave Creek, Carefree, currently held by Schweikert. Amish Shaw just won the primary. A super talented group of candidates. I mean, it was a very, very close race. Amish, who I've been friends with for a long period of time, ever since he's entered politics, I can tell you he will leave no stone unturned to make sure that we win that seat. But that's going to take a lot of support, not just locally, but nationally to raise the kind of money, because obviously it's a late primary in Arizona and a super tight race. So Amish Shaw was broke as he left the primary on July 30th. So it's all up to all of us and so many others to make sure that he has the volunteers and resources to win that race. And I've been spending a lot of time with him. He considers me a mentor. I don't know if that's going to help him or hurt him. I hope it helps him. He considers me a mentor in this crazy political world. And then Kirsten Engel, who I mean, I just admire so much. She barely lost the race last time. She's came roaring back, and she's been outraising her opponent, Juan Ciscomani, down in Pima County for many quarters. She's running a hell of a strong race. That is a winnable, and I would argue must-win seat for us as well. When we are successful, we'll pick up 2 of the 4 seats necessary to win back the majority right here in Arizona. So I know you hear a lot. If you follow these things closely, I know the people on this call do. I know you know that they talk about California as so key, New York as so key. Don't sleep on Arizona. Us winning those 2 seats, we're halfway there nationally, just in Arizona, to winning back the majority. And you saw him speak if you watched the convention. I can tell you, he is a superstar. Superstar is Hakeem Jeffries, and he will be the next Speaker of the House of Representatives. An amazing leader. He'll be the first African-American in American history to serve in that position. A great guy. He and I are friends. We're both sports fans, so we spend a lot of time talking sports. He's going to be in Arizona October 1st for a major event supporting myself, Kirsten Engel, and Amish Shah. So I'll make sure everybody on this call gets the information about seeing Hakeem Jeffries, the next Speaker of the House. And then, of course, holding on the Senate. Obviously, Ruben Gallego, he and I have been friends for over 20 years. He is running a very strong race. He is doing something very important for the state of Arizona, and that is ensuring that Kari Lake never wins an election here in Arizona, ever. We just cannot let her ever hold any office at any time in any place in the state. But separate and apart from that, Ruben is going to win that race, and he's committed that he does not support maintaining the filibuster. And that is a huge change from Senator Sinema, the incumbent, who jealously protected the filibuster. I feel that was the wrong choice, as there's been assaults on our civil rights, particularly the loss of reproductive rights. That's important civil right had been in place for 50 years. It was settled law, stare decisis, as we say in the law. And I mean, if you want to protect a Senate rule over constitutional rights, I got a problem with that. in protecting his constitutional rights, in this case, restoring a constitutional right, is way, way more important than the filibuster. So obviously, that'll be a major change there. And obviously, we've got a chance to pick up the seat. Colin Allred in Texas is my colleague in Congress. Great candidate. He's got a chance to take out Ted Cruz. Debbie Margarcel-Powell in Florida has a shot of taking out Rick Scott. We're probably going to lose West Virginia, so we're going to have to pick up a couple seats elsewhere. It's going to be tough, but we're going to do our part here in Arizona. But you can imagine Kamala Harris being president with a Democratic majority House of Representatives and a Senate that doesn't have the filibuster. We can finally pass the Women's Health Protection Act and restore Roe v. Wade as the law of the land in Arizona. We could finally pass common sense gun safety legislation, including a ban on assault weapons that do not belong on our streets. We can finally pass immigration reform, border security and immigration reform, very similar to what Senator McCain led on about 10 years ago. It almost passed a bill that did have both border security and immigration reform, take on big pharma and get negotiation of drug prices, not just for Medicare recipients, but for everyone in the United States of America, significantly reducing those drug prices. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of what we can accomplish that are not just, these are strong public policies and also very popular public policy. The American people want these policies. It was the filibuster. We had a situation when Joe Biden first got elected. We did have a majority Democratic House and Senate, but not a filibuster-proof one. And because Manchin and Sinema refused to budge on the filibuster, we were not able to pass these strong public policies that the president wanted. We have a chance to do it this year. And that is why questions that folks may have about either policy or the campaign process. And I appreciate you allowing me to talk about the House of Representatives, because that gets a little bit lost in translation, but it is as important as almost anything else that's going to be on the ballot, winning back the majority in the House of Representatives.
Congressman, this is Janie. Thank you so much for what you've told us so far. It's your record in Congress that makes me go to sleep comfortably every night, because I know that you're in there advocating, fighting for what's best for me and for most Americans. So before you start answering questions, Susie Thornton has put in the chat a link to your website. And elections are won, hopefully, because we have the best candidate. That's you. But those campaigns also need money. And I know that we need to support you in as many different ways as you can. So I'm leaving that in the chat, and I'm going to put a challenge out to Blue Tuesday. I will match the first $500 in contributions. So hop on the chat, keep an ear tuned to what the congressman is doing when he's answering questions, but hop on that website and make a donation, and I will match the first 500. Now,
wow, that's incredible, Janie. I appreciate that. I need
Well,
for the people on Blue Tuesday, I need your prayers. I need your friendship. Give me a few air hugs. And yes, if you can rub two nickels together, I need that. But if you can't rub two nickels together, or maybe you can as well, I know this is a group of activists and leaders, but I need your help, your volunteer, because that is actually more important than money. Is if you're in a position to give me your time. That's how Democrats win elections, is on the ground at the doors with our volunteer effort.
well, you are a keystone for us in Congress in terms of our values and our interests and our best interests. So again, the challenge is I will match the first 500. If you can go to Congressman Stanton's website and make a contribution, any amount that you can will help.
And I want to make one more point. That is this. At least the way I've always run races, There is no top of the ticket, middle of the ticket, bottom ticket. If we're on the ticket together, we are teammates and we're going to run together. So any dollars that come my way, I work hand in hand with the competitive legislative districts that we have, state legislative districts, because I'm in the East Valley, Chandler, Mesa, Tempe, Ahwatukee. It is, in addition to LD4 and a few others, the battleground districts to win the state legislature. And I'm passionate about that as well. So money that comes my way, we use for voter outreach, and we hit the households equally on my behalf as well as our state legislative partners in my district.
That's wonderful. And Susie's put a direct line to Act Blue for people, and I've already gotten the first direct message that $50 has already been put in. So I'm matching that. I will match the first 500. Your first question is from Melanie Hobden, and Melanie's a wonderful activist from LD12. She says, thanks for joining us. What are your thoughts on getting a farm bill passed in the lame duck Congress?
Well, it's gonna, if we win the majority, then the Republicans are going to want to come to the table and cut the best deal that they can. So we want our priorities in that farm bill, and our priorities, let's be honest, are feeding kids. We want the most. I mean, Tim Walz, you heard so much about the bill they passed in Minnesota, which gave every kid nutrition at school. In Arizona, we don't do that. Some kids get it, some kids don't. We want every kid, without question, without having to show proof of income or whatever, just provide nutritious food for kids at school and on the weekends too, by the way. That's critically important for so many kids that may not have the opportunity to have nutritious meals at home. We also want to have programs where they can take a backpack home on a Friday full of nutritious food that they can feed themselves and their families. But that is the main difference. We want a robust program to help the food banks around the United States of America, to help the I guess what used to be called the food stamp program, and also nutritious meals in schools. The Republicans don't want to do that. And that's really the big fight right now. And so we're not going to give in on that. So we're not going to settle for a bill that doesn't provide for the appropriate level of nutrition programs. There's some other, the farm bill has a lot of aspects to it that we need to be mindful of. Things like, does chocolate milk count as milk and things like that. We've got to come to bipartisan agreement on that. You can imagine there's a lot of lobbyists that are lobbying. The main dispute is over the breadth of the nutrition programs in America. Yes, if we win, we'll cut a better deal. And the Republicans will be much more willing to come to the table. If we don't win, I don't think they're going to want to be willing to come to the table. So the number one thing we can do to get a good farm bill is win this important election. It's the argument, if I were to give the Republicans, I know there was an argument about, Donald Trump on the border deal, Donald Trump telling the Republicans don't do the bipartisan deal. It was all, the Republicans argue, well, that's because we want to win the election and cut a better deal. But does anyone think that they are going to control all three branches of our government? I don't think there's really a realistic path for them to do it. They should have taken the deal. It was a pretty good deal. That bill was a pretty strong bill on border security. It did not have any modernization of the immigration system. So it was a bill probably more on the Republican side than on the Democratic side. They should have taken the deal. I think they're going to rue the day that they didn't.
Thanks again for being our honored guest today. We're going to leave the Act Blue link in the chat. And again, I'm going to match up to the first 500. We've got to get you back into Congress for all of the things that you do for us, your constituency, for Arizona, for all Americans. Thank you again so much for being our guest today.
Janie, you say such nice things about me. I got to hang out with you more often. It's awesome. Thank you for being so generous with your kind words. My head is getting so big. I love it.
Well, I follow
you,
you
Greg.
everywhere, no matter what event you have. There I am.
Look, Blue Tuesday is an important thing. I mean, it's kind of a group therapy session in so many ways of like-minded people. It's good to come together talk policy, celebrate our victories, commiserate over our losses, but it kind of gets our juices going again. So I'm really proud of what Blue Tuesday does. And I know as soon as the call is over, people are going to be rolling up their sleeves and getting right to work, electing people that share our values, getting us elected in this most important election. Thanks for having me. It was awesome.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Greg. If I could just say this, Linda here, we love you. And I know Janie will have to pay $500 easily. It'll happen.
All right, take it easy. Thanks, everybody. That's really nice. Thank you, Jamie, for your generosity. Bye-bye.
Not a problem.
Best wishes.
Our next speaker is Pinny Sheoran, and she's one of my personal sheroes. She's a past chair of the Maricopa County Democratic Party, the second largest county party in the United States after Los Angeles. In a recent column for the Arizona Republic, she laid out a scenario for Arizona's upcoming elections that should have everyone in our state very alarmed. Quote, legislatures in action sends message to election workers under siege. Fend for yourselves, end quote. The political party that created havoc during the last elections is at it again. This time, the plan for their mischief is being developed well in advance of the actual elections and is being aided by the Arizona legislature. What makes talk of active shooter drills for election workers and legislators blocking legislation designed to protect these workers so disturbing is the fact that this thinking is quickly becoming the norm. Penny is from the Arizona League of Women Voters. She's done so much incredible work there too. And I was reading the history of the League of Women Voters. And in 1919, President Carrie Catt of the National American Women's Suffrage Association proposed the creation of a, quote, League of Women Voters to finish the fight and aid in the reconstruction of the nation, end quote. And that's when it was begun in 1919. Penny, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Well, Janie, as always, I am in the hallowed halls of activist democracy when I attend any event hosted by the Blue Tuesday. I miss my Blue Tuesday pals. Linda, I miss you. But I know you're doing amazing work, and we continue, and I continue to fight in many different spaces for all that we hold dear, which is the right for all women, and to make sure the democracy holds the promise we anticipated when we all grew up and started voting, or even before that. For me as an immigrant, this is the promise that brought me to the shores of this land. And so for me, this fight becomes very, very important. So Janie and Linda and the whole team, thank you so much. I am going to share my screen as I have been told I might. So I'll get to that as quickly as possible. Would for correct, and I've never been there of Maricopa County Democratic Party. So people who have a longer history and a longer memory than I will certainly say, wait a minute, you know, I don't think that's true. So Janie, if you don't mind, I am going to turn off my video only because there seems to be an issue with the internet and my ability to share my screen. Is that okay, Susie, Janie, and Linda?
Yes, and now we can see the slides. Great.
Okay, great. Okay, so I have a little bit of slow on the internet, so I'd like to be sure that you can see the information And I'll come back on screen as I answer questions. So it is really important for me to share that I am representing the League of Women Voters of Arizona, which has about as long a history as the National League does. It was formed in 1981. In 1941 in Arizona. So we are a nonpartisan grassroots civic organization. We encourage informed and active participation in the government. We also have studies and particularly stated public policies, which influences both our education and advocacy. We have over 100 years experience. The league in Arizona consists of a state league, and it also has 5 local leagues. So I want you all to be aware that we have a league in Greater Tucson, we have a league in Metropolitan Phoenix, we have a league in Northwest Maricopa, serving the west part of Maricopa County. We have a league in Yavapai County, serving most of Yavapai County, and we have a league in Northern Arizona, serving Sedona and the Flagstaff area. And we are an all-member volunteer organization. We have no paid staff, so we're very excited when all of our members partner with the community to do the work that is so important. Our mission is empowering voters and defending democracy. And so we do mission-driven work through a variety of programs. What I'd like to tell you is today, in the time I'm allocated, and Janie, I'm assuming 20 minutes. If not, tell me when to stop and I'll talk fast or move it along, okay? I'm going to tell you a little bit about the League. There are 2 major things that the League does: voter services and advocacy work. Under voter services, some of you know about this, but many don't. And that is the League has a decade-long service to the voters by providing a digital voter guide. It's about a decade old. It's won numerous awards, and it's called vote411.org. And on this platform, we invite candidates to provide, it's a one-stop shop. So it has candidate information, ballot propositions, and election information. The primaries, we had over 650 candidates represented, and we anticipate to have similar. We provide information on all the races down to the school boards and local races. So if you are in a legislative district, or if you are in one of the school boards and you don't see your candidates providing information, help us with the thanking and shaming campaign we have, because they owe it to the voters to provide information about themselves. We're also very active in the Election Protection Coalition. We're one of the steering committee partners, and we recruit our own members and in the community to serve as election monitors. These are not poll workers. These are not observers. We are coming up on a voter registration drive, and with the recent SCOTUS decision, there are some important implications to all of us who are doing voter registration. I'll touch on it briefly, and we will be doing an actual education outreach. And so hopefully, if you're interested, come and find out about what does the SCOTUS decision regarding Arizona's registration process imply for the work we do. And the other thing that we are embarking on, which we've done for a very long time, maybe some of you remember, some of you don't, but the Presidential Election Commission was founded by the League of Women Voters, which got discontinued by the wonderful President Reagan. And however, in the meantime, the League has continued to do a lot of work in the area of conducting debates and forums, nonpartisan debates and forums at local, state, and at local, state, and some federal races. We do a lot of legislative analysis and lobbying. We are in the midst of several litigation right now. And we also provide arguments in support or opposition to ballot propositions. So we are 104 years old, a little bit older, plus some more months. February 19th is when actually Arizona's statehood day is the day that the League of Women Voters was also formed. So I'm going to go past this very fast, but there are three things I'd like to bring to your attention. One is I get a lot of questions such as, why isn't the league doing X or Y? And what is so important for our partners in the community to understand is the league is very deliberative and careful about the positions it takes, or what it will advocate for. And that is arrived at by some deep studies that are conducted on a variety of issues. So the studies can be at the national level, state, or local level. We just finished our convention in June, where a number of new positions were adopted and new resolutions were taken. What happens is state and local leagues are required to make sure that whatever actions we embark on are aligned with these public policy positions. I will put in the chat the specific document you can always reference, or you can go to the LWBAZ site where you can find our public policy positions. Vote 411 is, as I said, a really important digital voter guide that we want to share with you all, and we encourage you to use it, to ask others to use it. What Vote 411 allows a voter to do is put in their address, it'll pull up a ballot, and they can research information about all the candidates on the ballot in one location. They can also find the ballot propositions and the analysis that the league provides on that same platform, plus where to find your polling locations. We always connect this site to the official sites. We don't use Ballotopedia. We don't use any of these third-party sources. What we do use is the official county or state sites for them to find election information and to find the location of polling locations. This year, we will also be promoting election protection. So if they're having any issues during the elections, they can contact the election protection number and actually file their complaint. And there is a controls, there's a group of volunteers who manage the controls center, where we get the calls and then triage it to the different agencies. So I'd also like to remind everybody, please share with every voter you know that we have rights, and the two most important rights are our Voting Rights Act and the Help America Vote Act. Most of us are sort of aware of the Voting Rights Act. Some of us are aware of the HAVA, or the Help America Vote Act. And the most important thing here is that when our voters go to a polling location, and if they don't have the proper identification, they cannot be turned away. No poll worker should be telling a voter, you cannot vote. They have to be given a provisional ballot. It is not something that poll workers often do, nor is it something that we as activists are aware of. So we encourage you, please, to share that information and make sure everybody is aware of these two very important laws that protect our rights. I think most of us know what the general election dates are going to be. October 7th is the voter registration deadline. We have some challenges coming up with the new SCOTUS ruling, and so we all should be aware of this. The in-person voting is from October 9th to November 1st. October 25th is the last day to request an early ballot. And then October 29th is a last day to mail it in. But, you know, the county folks always, one of the biggest pushes this year is going to be to avoid the late early ballots, because they really burden the system, and to get people to get their ballots in early. The other thing that I would like to really encourage as part of our work with the Election Protection Arizona is, please, if you would all take time to encourage and recruit volunteers to serve as protection monitors, election protection monitors. We are going to need a lot of eyes on the ground, on the polling locations this year to make sure no one is turned away and to alert the Election Protection Coalition if there are issues. Okay, so what's on your ballot? I'm speaking to the choir here. You all know you got to vote the whole ballot, so I won't even spend much more time on that. But I will share with you what we're going to be doing on debates and forums, and we encourage you all as we advertise these. If you would like to attend, do. If not, join us on the live stream. We plan on hosting 3 Senate debates, one in Phoenix, one in Tucson, one in Prescott. Or NAU, they're still working it out. I think it's going to be at the Embry-Riddle University in that area. We have selected to hold the debates only for CD1 and CD6. On the 21st, there'll be a debate of the Central Arizona Project Water Board. I know these don't seem to be very important, but these are down ballot races, and who's on that water board can make a huge difference to the policies and how our water is being managed, which is a very scarce commodity for us. The Corporation Commission, we all know the issues around the Corporation Commission and the issues around the rate hikes. So we encourage you to join and listen to the candidates, okay? This being a Democratic group, my suspicion is you made up your mind, but it would be good to see what all the candidates have to say and what we have to anticipate should the candidate you love not win. You know, what is the next battle we have to keep an eye on? These are some legislative debates. They're all going to be virtual. They're going to be hosted by the local leagues. Our plan is to host something on LD1, 16, 17, 23. LD2, LD4, LD9, LD13, and LD27. These are what we have identified both through our own analysis and in working with a number of different coalitions as the districts in which we need to pay the most attention. So I'm going to segue into the ballot proposition, and I want to just spend a very short time reminding everybody of this. And one is that the right of citizens to make laws, which is direct democracy, has been in our Constitution since statehood, 1912. There has been a consistent effort to erode it. And one of the first initiatives was the Women's Suffrage Initiative, and it was a landslide victory. What's important to remember is in our Constitution, it clearly states that the Constitution, while the legislature can make laws, it reserves the people the right. It reserves the right for people to propose laws and amendments and to enact and reject such laws and amendments at the polls, independently of the legislature. That's the key, that we do not have to follow along with the legislature. Now, I think most of you know what an initiative and referendum is, but there are 3 items that, as a reminder. One is that we have the power to do this as citizens. Second is the legislature does not have the power to repeal an initiative or referendum that has been passed. And the third is they cannot amend the initiative of referendum except to further what the original intention of the initiative of referendum was. Okay, so here's the deal, folks, and we all know this. We've been watching this in the last 2 legislative sessions, which is when they can't get their way, they know the governor is going to veto. What do? They create concurrent resolutions, either at the Senate or the House. And all they require is a simple majority, whereas we require, as citizens, thousands and thousands of signatures in order to pass a ballot proposition, okay, and a lot of money. So here's what we should be aware of. There are 13 propositions on the statewide. This is statewide propositions on the 2024 ballot. 11 of those were referred by the legislature. 4 referrals were made in 2023, 7 in 2024. 6 are amendments to the state constitution. 5 are amendments to the current state law. There are 2 citizen-led initiatives, and both are amendments to the state constitution. Here's what's at stake. So we're urging everybody to vote the full ballot. Now, Janie, I am going to say this somewhat different than what you all shared, which is vote no, except for that one proposition. We are urging not giving a message, vote no on everything down ballot when it comes to propositions, because we could harm bonds and propositions proposed at the local level, especially the schools. The community college in Maricopa is very concerned because they have a proposition on the Maricopa County level ballot. Supporters of education, you will want to support that. So yes, we urge you to look at the propositions very carefully, especially the ones referred by the legislature. But I don't know that as a league, we are urging vote no, on all of them, other than the abortion one, just because we're concerned about that tendency to kind of mark the ballot real quickly, especially if it's 3, and it could be so harmful to our schools and our municipalities and also our county community colleges. So there's a lot in the interjection of special interests to bury ballot initiatives, legislature getting more control over who we're going to vote and when, citizens' ballot initiatives getting more expensive, judges have lifetime appointment, and anything we decide to do in this 2024 ballot will get canceled if one of those propositions does pass. We are not going to have time to cover the propositions, but we urge you to, and more importantly, if you go to Vote 411, we have detailed analysis of all the propositions, and we urge you to read that. The other thing that we do in advocacy is litigation. The league loves to litigate, where we were instrumental in stopping the intimidation of voters at the ballot box. It was our lawsuit that had a very important impact on that particular situation in the 2022 election, during the 2022 election. Currently, there are 2 very critical items that are going through the courts. One is the document proof of citizenship requirement to vote in elections. We are part of an amici brief, and basically SCOTUS came down with 2 sort of almost split decisions on this, and it's going to have some impact on all of us in terms of how we register voters, because if a voter doesn't have the important documents during the time that they register, it is possible that they will not be given automatically they will not be registered automatically as a federal only voter. So please watch for this. We're going to be putting out some education on this weekend, and so hopefully you all subscribe or are interested in subscribing to the league newsletter. We urge you to do that. And the second case that is still working through the courts is the voter intimidation language. As you can imagine, that is a real concern for us in the Arizona Election Protections Manual. And we're waiting to see how that progresses through the courts. But litigation is something that we are prepared to do, and we know we have to step up when we get to the next stage of this election. It's not just pre-election, but it's going to be on election day and post-election till all of the votes are certified, that we all will need to stay alert. So I believe I have 2 minutes left, so I will open this. I'll stop sharing my screen and open it up. How might I schedule a
Actually, Penny, this is Janie. Greg went a bit over on his, so we are out of time for your presentation, but Susie has put in the chat the 411 and other websites for you. And there are questions in chat if you'd like to answer them. And anyone else, if you have a question for Penny, please put it in chat so that she can answer those for you. And thank you again for giving us all that information. No one should go to the ballot this year uninformed. There's just too much to know and many resources for finding out. And the League of Women Voters is definitely one of those. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Penny.
Thank you.
Awesome information.
And our next speaker is Jen Marson. She is the executive director for the Arizona Association of Counties. And I'm really looking forward to Jen's presentation because I am totally ignorant when it comes to the Arizona Association of Counties. Jen, when I found out what you do and what you're responsible for, I thought, oh my God, thank goodness. But I didn't know the breadth of what it is that you do. Jen's research, my introduction is going to be very short because I want you to spend your time telling us what we need to know. Jen's research and advocacy areas of expertise include property taxes, elections, public records, criminal justice, law enforcement, justice and superior courts, and education. There it is, the whole gamut. Jen is a yoga enthusiast and native of Arizona. She received both a Bachelor of Arts and Master's degree in Communication Studies from Arizona State University with an emphasis in rhetoric and advocacy. And Jen, thank you so much for being with us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. So for those of you who don't know, and I don't expect anyone to know what my organization does, we are a small nonprofit, nonpartisan association that works with county government. We are essentially an advocate for county government. We work largely with the elected positions at county government, but also some appointed ones. And so for the purposes of this call, that would be your county recorders and your election directors. So I am essentially the face of elections at the legislature. I'm a lobbyist. I testify dozens of times a week on matters related to elections between both chambers. And as you can imagine, it's been quite a hot button topic since about 2016 here in Arizona. Before 2016, elections was a super boring area of the law. And then we have definitely moved into a more exciting time. So for today, I was asked to come and talk about poll working, which I'm happy to do because it is a very necessary part of the election process that often goes undiscussed, quite frankly. Let's see, I've been a certified election officer, I think, since 2007, meaning even though I don't work for an election department, I have gone through the same training that all of your election administrators go through the Secretary of State's office. So I've been certified since 2007. I've served as a poll worker, all of the different jobs, and I'm going to tell you what those are. I've also served as a troubleshooter. I live in Maricopa County, so that work has been with Maricopa County, though I did some guest troubleshooting in Pinal County for a couple of elections. And so I really just have a love of the election space. I kind of, for those of you who know the movie My Cousin Vinny, I'm like the Mona Lisa Vito of elections, right? I don't do the job, but I'm basically a general knowledge expert when it comes to elections. So I hope in that way I can be helpful for you all today. So most of Arizona's counties, not all, we have two that don't use a vote center model at all, but most counties use a vote center model or a hybrid, meaning you might have some traditional precincts, old school style, right? But you mostly have vote centers. It doesn't really matter which model you use, you still need, I'm going to use the term volunteer, even though they're paid. Okay, because the poll workers are largely a volunteer force, people who've stepped up and said, yeah, I'm willing to give my time for very little money to come and help manage the process of people, allowing people their opportunity to vote. As we've moved into a vote center and an early voting environment, opportunities to be poll workers are more than just election day. So if we think about elections, you know, 25, 30 years ago, we were talking about Tuesday only, showing up to be a poll worker from about 5:30 a.m. till probably at least 8 p.m. It was one day. But now, because we have so many early voting options and we have early voting centers that are open for the many days prior to Tuesday, we have opportunities for you to get involved in a lot of different times instead of just election day. But the jobs are relatively the same, whether you're talking about the early environment or whether you're talking about the day of environment. And that's just terminology that I use, early and day of, when I'm talking to legislators. So statutorily, there's our requirements for these citizen volunteers to be poll workers. There are 4 jobs at any of the voting locations. I'm not going to say polls because, like I said, some of them are vote centers. So you have your inspector, your judges, your marshal, and your clerks. And while the statute says you have to have 1 inspector, you have to have 2 judges, you have to have 1 marshal, and you have to have 1 clerk, almost every location anywhere in the state has more than just those 4 or 5 people, because you're going to have multiple clerks for sure, especially in a vote center model. So the first thing I want to talk about is what each of those positions do. The inspector is like the manager of the voting location or the precinct. They are going to put people where they think they're going to be most effective. Even if the county assigns someone the role of marshal, maybe when we get there that day, that person has hurt their foot. So they can't go outside and monitor the line and remind people of the kind of ID they should have before they ever get inside. So the inspector's job is to make sure that the right person is in the right job on the day, because it may be different than what the county assigned them, right? So the inspector's like the manager. They make sure everything is going smoothly. They break people. And what I mean by that is, if you have a clerk who's been doing the clerk job for 5 hours and they haven't had a chance to stop and eat anything because it's a really busy location, the inspector comes in and acts as a clerk so that person can go on a break and get some food, get a little break, things like that. Your judges are statutorily assigned the same responsibilities that an inspector has, again, to break the inspector, right? They also help with the check-in process. They help with any of the assisted voting devices that any of the precincts or voting locations may have. The marshal, as I sort of alluded to, is the person who officially opens the polls. Hey, everyone, it's 6 a.m. The polls are open. They will do a countdown as the day winds down. Polls are closing in an hour, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, 5 minutes. And they also walk the line. We want that marshal to be walking the line if there is a line, to make sure that people know, hey, if you're just dropping off an early ballot, don't stand in this line, right? If you are going to stand in this line, here's the ID you need to have when you get up to the front. Don't stand in line if you don't have the right things. Go home and get the right things, then come back and stand in line. So we want that marshal to be walking that line. And then our clerks are the folks who are checking people in, handing someone a ballot, processing someone's paperwork if they have to vote provisionally, things like that. So all of these people work as a team to make sure that voters, when they come in to vote, whether it's early or day of, are checked in quickly and efficiently and correctly, that they are in the right location, and that they are given the right ballot, which of course was especially important in the primary election, right? In the general election, everyone's getting the same ballot per precinct, right? Not everyone's getting the same ballot. One thing I do want to make sure that this group knows, because you are so plugged in and connected, you don't have to be 18 to be a poll worker. You just have to be 16. So if you know some minors who are interested in getting involved in this process, as long as they're going to be 16 by election day, they can serve as a clerk. That's the only job they can serve as, but that's great. We need most clerks, most of all. A couple of things to note: they have to be 16 by the election, they have to be citizens, they have to be under supervision of the inspector or the other workers at the location. They have to go through training, just like any other poll worker has to go through mandatory training. And they have to have their parent or guardian's permission to be the poll worker if they are under 18. However, please note, for those of you who are in the education space, if a student is going to be a poll worker, it doesn't count against that school's ADM, average daily membership. So there's no finances taken away from the school because that student isn't in school that day. That's part of the legislation that actually ACO helped pass many years ago to allow minors to serve as poll workers. So when we're talking about the number of people needed, it's a really big number, right? I think Maricopa is trying to get somewhere between 250 and 300 vote center locations for that election day on Tuesday. In a vote center model, you need more than the precinct model number of poll workers. So you're looking at probably 8 to 15 people per location. Depends how big the location is, depends how much traffic they're expecting that day, and that's all built on different models to try and work out that math. So just in Maricopa County, you're looking at probably 3,000 to 3,500 people. That's if they're fully staffed, which never happens. It never happens. We're always short of poll workers in every county. So I often have legislators say, or sometimes people who come to the hearings, they'll tap me on the shoulder afterwards and say, I know that we would have enough poll workers. I know people who would volunteer. And I say, that's great, but that's never happened. So if you're going to tell me that you have enough people amongst your friends and family who are always willing to be poll workers, I say, show up. Show me that. I would love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong because counties are always struggling to get enough people to help out. So if you know those people, if you are those people, we love it and we would love to have more, because inevitably, just like any other job, something's going to happen that day. Somebody's going to have an emergency and not be able to show up. Somebody's kid is going to be sick and they're going to have to stay home with their kids. It's just like any other job. So we need to have those backups ready to go. The day runs smoothly when we have fully staffed voting locations and we rely on the public to help us staff those. Now, just so you know, I'm looking at my time here, I'm okay. There are provisions in our laws that allow for, I'm not sure what the right phraseology is. If the counties can't find the poll workers through the recruitment process, or the people coming in and saying, hey, I'd like to be a poll worker, there is a mechanism for the county party chairs to submit names to the county to have those positions backfilled, if you will, by party appointment. The reason that that is a secondary step is because the statute primarily requires counties to be even-handed in terms of the two major parties when it comes to assigning poll workers to any one location. We don't want to have any voting locations staffed by just Democrats or any staffed by just Republicans, because that doesn't pass the smell test at the end of the day. That is a breeding ground for conspiracy or concern, and we don't want that. Sometimes that's all we have. If we don't have enough to be an even split, we have to fill those spaces. And so I'm talking to a very plugged in group. Please make sure that your county party chairs have that list ready to go. Because if we don't have enough people, again, and we never have, just regular through our recruitment process, we're going to rely on county party chairs to give us lists of names of people who are willing to serve. And if the Republican Party has more names, there's going to be more Republican poll workers. If the Democrats are willing to send us more names, there's going to be more Democrat poll workers. So you all need to, in your circles, make sure that the right people have this information so that the names are being forwarded to the counties appropriately. I'm looking at my time. I have 1 more minute left according to the schedule. If there are questions, I would be happy to try and answer them, whether they're poll specific or just general election information specific. And I really appreciate you having me on today. It's always nice to share information.
Oh, Jen, I can't, in 2 years, we have to have you back on, but earlier, I think, so that people can really understand what's going on with the poll. I mean, I've been an active politician, not politician, but voter for all my life, and you're giving me information that I did not know before. So this is really critical. There are a couple of questions in chat, and our fabulous Susie has put in a website for you too. I mean, a URL. This from Deb Browning. People have told me they applied to be poll workers and never heard back from election officials. Any suggestions?
Yes, I would suggest recontacting, because here's what also I've seen happen. Let's say you're from an area that's very plugged in, regardless of party, right? It's just a very active, people are really interested. If that's not the area where we need people, they may have said no to those people because history has told us if you live in Apache Junction, you don't want to be assigned a location in Surprise, right? So even if you are willing to go anywhere in your home county, that's something you should communicate with the people if they've initially not responded back to you. So maybe that is what's causing it. There's no availability in your general vicinity, but if you're willing to drive, I bet you they're willing to send you.
And are you saying that the bottom line is make sure that the county party chair has your name so that you can be plugged in?
Correct. That's the
Oh, good.
fallback. So
Okay.
if for whatever reason the county didn't get back to you, and yet the county still has holes to fill, the party is going to fill those holes.
Oh, great. Okay. There's another question from Nora Walker. Do poll workers have to do the whole shift?
So on election day, I know for a fact the answer is yes. If you are applying to be a poll worker, or I won't call it poll, a voting location worker in the early environment, I think there are shorter shifts available in some of the counties for those roles. But on election day, you are committed for the whole day. Usually the county will ask you to be there by 5:30. Obviously, polls close at 7, but if you're in line, as you know, you get to vote. And if that's a long line, your line may not end until 8, and then you've got to take down and count and all that stuff. So it is a very long day, and there's no breaking up the election day shift.
Well, my husband and I, this is an additional answer to that. My husband and I, every election day, would drive from poll voting center to voting center with water and snacks and food. And that's really an LD task, I think. So if we can spread the word to LD chairs and say, make sure you are going around to the different poll centers and making sure that your poll worker, doesn't matter what party, any poll worker has the water and snacks and food that they need, because they're doing an important job.
Yeah, absolutely. And they will appreciate that. They love snacks.
Jen, I cannot tell you how important your presentation was and how much we appreciate it. And we'll have you back again in 2 years, but earlier, so people can sign up and understand what the whole poll worker deal is. So
Happy
thanks
to help
again.
anytime.
All right, thank you. That is it for our presentations today. And we want to remind you that our next Blue Tuesday Forum is September 24th. It's always the last Tuesday in the month. And we will have Mary Beth O'Connor and CJ Pasco. And we will have one of the mayoral candidates from Scottsdale and one of the city council candidates from Scottsdale. So please join us then. In October, we'll have Chris Mays and Francesca Piccioli Martin, and they are both wonderful. In November, post-election, we will have Adrian Fontes, Patty O'Neill, and Melissa Galarza to talk about what's next on a state, county, and LD level. So please join us. Thank you for being with us today, and make sure that you look up all of the resources, the League for Women Voters, Save Our Schools Arizona, CEBV.us. There is so much information for you out there. There's no excuse for anybody to go to the polls and not be fully informed this year. Please join us in September. Have a wonderful month of September and what's left of August.
And be active. Thank you.
Be active and be cool.